Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session, On-Ramps to the Tech Sector, Effective Strategies for Accessing Tech Career Pathways. My name is Tom Hooper. I'm an Associate Vice President with JFF, leading our work unit, and we're thrilled that so many of you can join us today. Our session this afternoon focuses on addressing a critical issue that many of us have experienced in labor markets nationwide, identifying effective strategies for helping key demographic groups access career pathways in the tech sector. A number of entry-level occupations in the tech sector offer good jobs and career pathways. But as we know, women, communities of color, and individuals without bachelor's degrees too often have difficulty accessing these jobs. This session is specifically designed to provide you with an overview of tech career pathways nationwide, as well as promising on-ramp strategies for helping individuals in these groups access these pathways. We're joined today by three very talented speakers who will offer unique perspectives on this important issue. Sarah Lombach, a director with JFF, Kim Mitchell, Vice President of Program Strategy with NPower, and Robert Vaughn, Vice President and Head of the National Instructors Institute with NPower. Our agenda for this interactive session is very straightforward. First, Sarah will provide us with an overview of key tech sector career pathways and labor markets across the country, identifying promising on-ramp strategies that providers have used to help job seekers access these pathways. We're then going to pause and take some of your questions. After that, we'll hear from Kim and Robert with NPower, who will provide their perspective as a provider that is preparing individuals for tech pathways. They'll highlight the key elements of NPower's model, how they help participants overcome some traditional barriers to entry, and ultimately showcase practices that you can replicate in your own states and regions. We're then going to pause and again take more questions from all of you. And I encourage you now to be thinking about questions that you'd like to hear about from our speakers and begin populating the chat feature of the platform. We really want to have this be a really engaging session. I'll then close our session by providing you with a few resources that you can draw on as you develop and implement your own on-ramps models. So that's a very brief intro to today's session. Once again, we're so pleased that you all could join us today. We'll now hear from Sarah Lombach with JFF. Sarah, please take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom, so much. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here today and share a bit about the exciting work that JFF is doing to advance on-ramps in technology. Next slide. Over the last few years, JFF has had the privilege to support a broad range of IT and tech sector workforce development initiatives that have focused on diversifying the sector through broadening and intentionally supporting access and success for individuals without a four-year degree, and in particular, women, Black, and Latinx workers in particular. Much of the research that I'll be sharing was part of a report that we released last year. And as part of this work, we conducted in-depth interviews with over 30 IT training programs nationwide to understand what's working and where there are opportunities to further improve that work. And secondly, we conducted a labor market analysis to examine occupational data, job posting requirements, and the skills requirements for entry-level IT roles. Next slide. So I wanted to start with just a little bit of foundational information about the IT sector overall and a few key points related to the status of the sector at this moment. So first, what we've seen through the pandemic is that tech is growing and demand for these roles has only increased over the course of the last year, but has been increasing for years in the past because of the increasing reliance on technology really across all areas of our lives. Tech jobs are expected to grow 11% nationwide through the year 2029, and during that time period, add over 4.4 million jobs, showing that they really are high demand, high growth roles. These are jobs that offer strong wages, which are typically above the median hourly earnings within a particular region, and they truly have the potential to serve as vehicles for economic mobility. The graph on the right shows a little bit of additional information about current demand within the IT sector over the last 12 months. And you can see that job posting volume was highest for roles like software developers, systems engineers, and computer support specialists over the course of the last year. Second, I wanted to note that IT jobs, while we think of them within the tech sector very specifically, they're actually found across all sectors. And recent research by Burning Glass Technologies and Oracle found that almost 90% of all IT job openings are actually within non-tech industries. So the opportunity is not just around supporting tech employers, but actually helping all employers find the tech talent that they need. Finally, and most importantly, there's an enormous opportunity to diversify this sector. Nationally, Black and Latino workers together comprise less than 8% of tech workers, although together they're nearly a third of our overall workforce. And women of color in particular are only 4% of the computing workforce. So there's a real equity imperative to diversify this sector and broaden access to these high quality roles. Next slide. As many of us know, historically, IT has been a sector that's focused largely on hiring individuals with a 4-year degree. That being said, our research identified several specific occupational areas that are well positioned to offer on-ramps into the sector. These roles in programming, IT support and services, and cybersecurity are areas that are highly trainable, require skills that can be mastered through sub-bachelor's level training programs, and can offer long-term advancement potential within this sector. These specific entry point occupations are in programming, web developer. Within IT support, we identified network support specialists and computer user support specialists as particularly viable on-ramps. And then in cybersecurity, we saw security analysts, forensic analysts, and software developers as viable on-ramps within that career area. Each of these roles has median wages over $25 an hour, strong projected growth, and can truly serve as a launching point to a career in this sector. And programming and IT support roles in particular are very accessible to individuals without a bachelor's degree, and employers in those areas do have a history of hiring folks who have associate's level or some post-secondary education. Next slide. So through our recent research, we got some really interesting insights into what's working right now through looking at a broad range of tech training programs. We were able to see that the really rapid growth of the IT sector in recent years, which, as I mentioned, was a trend even before the pandemic, really created the impetus for significant investments within IT training. This has created a complex training and credentialing landscape with literally hundreds of boot camps, certificates, and training programs, offering a really broad range of training offerings for learners and workers. That being said, having such a broad range of offerings and such a robust credentialing landscape can sometimes make it difficult for job seekers to navigate and really understand what their options are for accessing on-ramps within this sector. In addition, we saw that despite a lot of progress, barriers do remain for workers without a 4-year degree, especially for justice-involved individuals. And this is most pronounced in the cybersecurity area, where it's not uncommon for individuals to require a security clearance in order to get a job. But it is something that is especially relevant in some of the higher level occupations in other areas of the sector beyond cybersecurity as well. Many of the programs that we've seen that have been really successful, including our colleagues at NPower, whom we'll hear from in just a few moments, really put diversity, equity, and inclusion at the center of the work that they do for all participants, and use that to offer really comprehensive and customized support services, which is another characteristic of the programs that we've seen that have been particularly effective. Next slide. So despite all of the exciting work that's being done and a lot of the progress that's been made in developing and supporting these on-ramps, there are still some challenges that remain in the sector. What we were able to see through our research is that movement along career pathways is a challenge for many individuals, since most training is focused on a single entry-level occupation. So workers really need additional supports and career navigation support in order to position themselves to move up to a next step role from an entry-level occupation. So we'd really like to see greater embedding of career pathway strategies throughout training programs. In addition, while this is starting to change, we've seen that IT employers are often less engaged in training than employers in other sectors. So there's a real need to bring employers in to support training, development, and design to build buy-in and also to help support really robust and high-quality work-based learning opportunities that not only can support strong and effective training, but also serve as a really important vehicle to placement. And finally, wraparound supports are truly essential, and programs need to and should offer them to the fullest extent that's possible. Whether it's a dedicated case manager, a career counselor, or partnering with local community-based organizations, workforce boards, or other support services providers, really ensuring that participants have access to the broad range of supports that they need is absolutely essential to ensuring their success in the programs. Next slide. So in closing this portion of the presentation, I just wanted to highlight some of the work that JFF has on tap over the next year. We're really excited to continue to support the next generation, the development of the next generation of IT workforce development strategies through support from google.org. We'll not only be supporting several communities who will be developing robust digital skills strategies within their regions, but we're also going to be doing additional work to weave together much of what JFF has done in the past through some of these core areas of our work. So building and bridging some of our TA work to over 40 sites that have been part of Department of Labor projects like Tech Hire and our new H-1B1 workforce grant. We'll be bringing in learnings from our collaboration with companies like Google and Verizon who have come to JFF to advance workforce innovations and their own credentialing efforts. We'll be bringing in insights from our own research and evaluation work focused on IT career pathways across a really broad range of projects and initiatives. And finally, learning from some of the work that our labs team has done through their acceleration work and supporting some of the key on-ramps and provider mapping within the IT space. So we're excited to continue this conversation today and to continue to support the building of really robust and high quality on-ramps to the IT sector for the field. And with that, Tom, I'll pass it back to you.
That's great, Sarah. Thanks so much. Terrific presentation. Let's pause now to take a question that's come in. You mentioned that one key barrier to entry for some key entry-level tech jobs is lack of a post-secondary degree. What are some effective strategies for addressing this barrier that you've seen?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. That's a great question. I think that's really at a core, at the core of a lot of this work. And I think that one piece of that is really starting with those one-to-one conversations with employers and really intentionally supporting their own understanding that they can hire individuals with the same sets of skills and competencies agnostic of degree, and that instead of using a degree as a sorting or filtering mechanism, by turning to a more skills-based hiring approach, they can really broaden their own talent pipeline and bring increased value to their own employees. And then I'd add too that as that conversation continues, pushing them to actually remove the degree requirements from their job requisitions is another piece that's really valuable. It's an important signaling mechanism and can also help, really broaden the pool of viable candidates who are actually willing to put their name in for those positions when they see that a 4-year degree is not technically required.
That's terrific. Really practical suggestions. Thank you. That's excellent. All right. Well, let's now turn to Kim and Robert from NPower to provide a provider's perspective on on-ramp strategies. Kim, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Appreciate the opportunity to have Robert and I share a little bit about NPower and really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this amazing conference. So NPower is an end-to-end solution moving people from poverty to the middle class in 3 specific ways. 1, providing certification-based tech training skills and providing training for those skills, providing paid work-based learning and job placement, and workforce readiness, AKA professional development, social support, mentoring, and access to continuous learning through advanced certification programs. Next slide. A little bit more about us is that our national footprint is rooted in community and really drives our commitment to advancing race and gender equity in tech, supplying a pipeline of tech talent to the industry to fill the jobs in demand, and achieving social and economic mobility for the populations we serve. Who we serve, next slide, are individuals who are confronting pivotal life transitions and decisions. Young adults who are from underserved communities and typically are marginalized and trapped in low-wage jobs or are under or unemployed, disconnected from school or work, between, again, the ages of 18 and 25. Women of color, in particularly, who are woefully underrepresented in the tech industry, and 5% in general or less of women are represented in the tech sector. And we've been focused on initiatives to really drive the increase in women and women of color pursuing tech careers. Our initiative called 40 by 22 is designed to help us deliver on that talent by increasing the representation of women and women of color in our programs to 40% by 2022. We've also just launched an initiative called Command Shift, which is a coalition of industry partners who are also committed to driving the shift in representation and supporting a culture that is more receptive and welcoming to women in the industry. And then finally, military-connected community of people who are both veterans, military spouses, and those who are in transition from active duty to civilian life. Next slide. We are a 20-year-old organization that for the last 10 years has been focused on tech training skills and job placement. And we have over 5,000 alumni today out in the industry. We continue to enjoy sustained results that are 80% retention or graduation rate of those who enroll in our program, an 81% placement rate. We're shooting for 85%, where we place individuals in tech jobs within 1 year of graduation. And 100% of our students are under and unemployed, and we enjoy them seeing an increase in wage of over 300%. Next slide. The model itself is really sort of an evolving one, and we've, of course, like many other organizations, have made changes and adjustments as a result of the pandemic, but it's primarily anchored in key practice areas of recruitment and admissions, curriculum and instruction, social support and professional development, and placement. We have half-day cohorts of individuals who are then able to participate in our program and also sustain at least a part-time job while they're going through the program. It ranges today from 23 to 30 weeks, depending on the program that they're enrolled in. We're hoping to expand that to an 8-week bridge program that then gives them access to different pathways that Robert will speak to in just a few minutes. We've shifted from a 100% virtual program delivery model to a hybrid model that will begin in August. And our model also focuses on ensuring that there's an integration of both the technology skills and understanding of the industry and the career readiness skills, so that the 21st century workforce skills are embedded in and connected to this combination of skills and abilities to succeed in the workforce. Finally, we have placement strategies and practice that's grounded in industry partners who both participate in our program by being guest lecturers and hosting internships. We are a registered apprenticeship program, and so we're encouraging employers to take on apprentices so that they're both able to invest in the additional training, but also provide more time for individuals to become inculcated into the company culture and therefore build the confidence and know that they too can contribute to the success of the company. So now I'm going to hand it over to Robert, who's going to share more about that journey for our students and the pedagogical practices and programs that we offer. Robert?
Thanks, Kim, and good afternoon to everyone. And you could go to the next slide as well. Just really piggybacking off of the elegant data that Sarah shared, what really drive our mission and the curriculum in the different pathways that we have found to be conducive to meeting the needs of industry and creating these opportunities for the communities we serve is really all about the data, as well as the corporate partners we work with, our alumni, staffing agencies and placement agencies. So a lot of important stakeholders went into not just driving our past mission, but what we want to be in the next decade. And so one of the things we embarked on, as Kim talked about, is what we like to call NPower 3.0. And part of that is creating new learning pathways. As Kim mentioned earlier, we have normally had about 23 to 30 weeks of training for our students to get those entry jobs. One of the things that we found were, especially during the COVID pandemic, is that a lot of our students had to go to work sooner than even at 23 and 30 weeks. But we also identified a lot of students who really showed grit and determination and had maybe some basic skills. They was able to achieve certifications and competencies a lot faster than 23 weeks. But then they will have to exit the program. And in the past, we normally didn't count that as a success because they didn't complete the program. But what we recognize is for us, it's all about the impact. And so part of what we've done with this learning pathways is both created more on-ramps and off-ramps where students can have stackable credentials and exit early into work. But in addition to that, we also wanted to do, as Sarah pointed out, address the opportunities for the IT support infrastructure type of entry roles, which typically is not a barrier based on you having a 4-year degree, as well as the software development, or as some people refer to as DevOps roles, which ultimately is all about, again, having a portfolio of work as well as having the ability to demonstrate what you can do. And so what we started to do here at NPower is we created and we're piloting an assessment tool. And it's important to say that our students are not typically tested for some type of reading or math scores. What we found is the success of people entering this program and launching digital careers is more based on their grit, identifying barriers of being able to take advantage of programs like this, whether it be digital access, they lack the computers or the equipment, or they lack the learning environments in order to do it. So we actually went from a face-to-face model to an all virtual model because of COVID, and as Kim said, now a hybrid model. And all of that, I would just say that what is important is not only the technical concepts that we're teaching and topics, but also preparing to meet the students where they are. So we invest equally amount of time in doing what we like to call the art and science of teaching, preparing our instructors and onboarding them to be able to identify barriers, learning styles, being very sensitive to gender issues, culture issues, but also ultimately we have what we call a trauma-informed model. But as students come into our program, they're able to take advantage of what we like to call our LEAP program, and then move into more of the infrastructure on the left side that you see, as well as start at the LEAP, which is entry level, and then move over to the right side, which is more what we call RISE, software engineering. So we want to make sure that our students are prepared for the software path or the infrastructure. And lastly, they can come back after they get a year or two under their belt and do what we call JET at the top, which is upskill for free and continue to learn new skills like cyber and cloud. With that, Tom, I'm going to pass it back over to you, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Kim and Robert, thank you so much. That was fantastic. And Sarah, again, thanks to you for your presentation as well. Such two very rich presentations. Also want to remind folks we've left some good amount of time for Q&A from attendees. So please keep sending your great questions into the chat, and we'll start taking those questions now. First, really good question that came in. And this is one that it'd be great to hear from all three of our presenters. Sarah, we'll start from you, just to give you a heads up that Sarah will be the first one to touch on it. The question is about career pathways. I'd love to hear more about what it looks like to embed career pathway strategies within the entry-level training. Does JFF have resources around that? Sarah, I know we've done prepared a bunch of really good written resources that we've provided around training strategies for the tech sector. Would love to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. I would definitely direct folks to the recent report we wrote, which is focused on IT on-ramp strategies, and it really does provide some discrete, actionable approaches for embedding career pathways throughout training programs. But I think like a couple of the core elements of that I'd love to touch on here are just building that awareness of what it looks like to actually move up and advance within a career area. So if you're in like IT support, for example, you may start as a computer user support specialist. You may then want to move into a role as an IT program manager or as a supervisor of other IT support workers, and understanding what those different branches look like and what types of training or credentials might be required to move up and along those pathways is really critical. And so helping to build that awareness from early on, and as folks are entering, some of these training programs, helps prepare them for that longer term trajectory and help ensure that like when they're ready to make that move and ready to prepare for that advancement, they're well equipped to do so and already have an idea of what it takes.
That's terrific. Kim and Robert, love to hear your thoughts on this one too. And you've obviously just touched on that a little bit in your own presentation.
Robert, why don't you take that?
Yeah, I was saying that's the last slide that I just did is exactly what Sarah just mentioned. If you look at that, it starts with PC technician type of work, basic help desk, move all the way up to, cybersecurity analysts, et cetera. It is all about understanding what those jobs are and then working backwards to make sure that the content, the competencies and the skills that you're trying to teach your students is all covered and is realistic. Again, what we have to make sure is that we assume everyone's coming, for the most part, with no exposure, so that we don't just simply put this curriculum together, but then minimize the need for students to have like digital literacy, basic fundamental skills and hardware. So that's exactly what our LEAP program does. And we move up to the Fly, Rise, and the Jet to show them how they can have that career trajectory and the types of certifications and skills that's going to be necessary.
That's great. That's great. A second question that's come in, and I think probably, again, we'd love to hear from both of you on this one. Kim and Robert, I think probably with you guys taking a first crack. This one's about the interviewing process and the culture of the tech sector. Even individuals who have developed the skills on their own may have trouble navigating the intense coding interview process for tech careers. How do we bridge in that support to level the playing fields even for grads of, again, compared to grads of four-year schools who may have more robust support? I know you talked about the support alums provide and mentoring, for example, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on that one.
Sure. I mean, it's core to the program from the very beginning. We start with them, while engaged in technical instruction, creating a LinkedIn page, creating more of a profile that begins to help them start to tell their own story, pitch what their strengths are. And to do that through the weeks of training that we provide, there is always a day set aside for professional development and mentoring. And we engage not only our own career teams in helping to prepare them for that first placement opportunity, which is often an internship or a work-based learning experience, but that we also engage our industry partners who do mock interviews, who do networking sessions and coaching. They come in and talk about the real world experience. And oftentimes when we query our partners about what else we could do to best prepare the talent for their companies, they say, the technical skills we can help reinforce. It's what people call soft skills, but we call them the power skills because they're not soft, right? It's the ability to become part of a team, to feel confident in presenting yourself and your ideas, really, strengthening communication skills, and helping to be better problem solvers, and to have confidence that you bring something to the table. So that's core to the career readiness or workforce readiness component of what we do, because that is critical to win over whoever they're sitting in front of in that job interview.
That's terrific. Sarah, anything to add to that one?
No, I agree completely with what was just shared. And I guess just very briefly, also just the fact that what we've seen a lot of programs do, especially through initiatives like the Google IT Support Professional Certificate implementation, is actually embed some of those technical skills as well that are required, for these entry-level occupations. If it's something like whiteboarding or, doing a specific, coding language or script, pairing that and integrating that within the training program so that participants can experiment with it, do it in a safe environment and feel comfortable kind of bridging the technical and power skills, I love that are required to actually do the job effectively. And by like doing so intentionally, they just feel much more, participants feel much more comfortable kind of bringing that knowledge and expertise and skills then into the workplace post-placement.
That's great. That's great. A great point. And we'll take one more question, and it actually ties into the last points that Kim and Sarah made about employer engagement, which of course was a key challenge that Sarah noted in her presentation about the challenge of engaging employers in the sector compared to some other sectors. Kim and Robert gave great examples of some successful strategies for engaging employers. This question came in. I'm curious, once you have employers on board and candidates ready to apply, what strategies have worked to connect candidates to jobs? And realistically, what do employers need to commit to in order to ensure folks continue succeeding on their roles? Kim and Robert, you talked about apprenticeship, for example, a really, really powerful model for both training folks for jobs, for skills in demand, and providing a job. It would be great to hear about your thoughts on that question related to apprenticeship and other strategies, just to start off.
I mean, to Sarah's point earlier, it's about building relationships with the partners, right? It's helping to appreciate and inform them that we're focused on skills versus pedigree, that what we're doing is developing the competencies that we've learned from them or what they're seeking in order to be successful on the job. We will also help them to appreciate providing internship opportunities, which gives them an applied learning experience that then also helps to manage the expectations of our industry partners, that this is someone, while they may not have a degree that you're accustomed to seeing, has the same potential and ability that a person with a degree who comes in still needs to learn the rules of the game, still needs an opportunity to practice whatever they've learned in academia. They often don't step out with the skills to contribute on day one, just like someone who has the credentials from a technology point of view needs to learn the rules of the road. So it's about managing expectation. It's about having them appreciate that we're focused on preparing individuals to be contributors, and that they need to offer the same grace as Robert teaches us in someone having an opportunity to learn how to succeed in the environment just like anyone else.
Yeah, and I would just briefly add, I was a former employer, and I got involved with NPower because as a cybersecurity chief information officer, I needed talent. And the reality is once I got exposed to this alternative talent, I was like, wow, these students can do work that some of the students who've been working, employees who's working 5 years can't do, because they was properly trained about competencies, as Kim said, versus, instead of degrees is about the skill. So I think a lot of that is not waiting to introduce students to them after the pro training. So we get them in early, they volunteer, as Kim said, they demonstrate what it's all about in their environment, they contribute to the curriculum, we constantly get their feedback. And if you keep them involved with that, they're clamoring to get that talent because they know that it's aligned to what industry is needing. And the reality of it is they have to. There's not enough people majoring in STEM programs to even fill all of the tech roles. So companies see this not simply as a benefit of impacting people positively. They see this as protecting the bottom line and their ability to compete.
That's terrific. That's great information. Sarah, anything to add to that last question?
I totally agree with everything that Kim and Robert shared. I would just add a slightly different lens. At JFF, we talk a lot about the continuum of employer engagement and the different types and kind of modalities that employers can kind of, plug into to support training programs. So I think, identifying the right level and type of contribution given where they're at and their experience kind of supporting these programs is really key and can help set them up to be long-term partners in the program. So, they might want to start maybe just hosting a couple learners in a job shadowing experience, or provide some, monthly job coaching or mentoring to learners. And if they have a positive experience, and as they're interacting with the learners and see the true value that they can bring, there's an opportunity to kind of up level that contribution over time, and to increase kind of, push them along that continuum, so that ultimately they're hopefully, hosting work-based learning opportunities, or maybe even apprenticeships. But finding that right level early on can help build the foundation with those employers, so that they really do feel comfortable and are well poised to be long-term partners in the work.
That's great. That's great. Okay, I know we're a little over time, which I will take responsibility for as the moderator. But really, really appreciate all the wonderful information our presenters provided. And thank you so much to those of you who provided questions, just great questions. I know we didn't get to all of them, but we'll make sure we do follow up to those we didn't get to in the chat. If we could bring the last two slides back up, wanted to provide a couple resources to all of you that can be helpful as you develop your own on-ramps training programs. These are all very specific resources that JFF has developed over the last few years that you all may find helpful as you develop your own training programs in your own states and regions. They provide very specific on-ramps models and practices that providers around the country are using to help individuals in a variety of demographic groups enter tech career pathways. And there are specific case studies embedded in here that you all can use for reference. These are all available for free, so really encourage you to use these models, to draw on them for reference. And finally, just a big thank you to Sarah, to Robert, to Kim for all of their great presentations today, all the time they've taken to offer some really thoughtful content and responses to questions that came in. Big thank you to all of you, and thanks to everyone for attending today's presentations. Really appreciate all the time you've taken and the great questions that you've submitted. Thanks again, everyone, and hope you have a great rest of the time with Horizons. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care.